So this year, I didn't buy a single book until March 30th, which now that I'm saying it out loud doesn't actually seem like that big of a deal, but it's a big deal to me. You know, a large part of what I do all the time as my hobby, as a part of this, is reading books. So it's a big deal for me. Hi, my name is Sara Freshly and welcome back to Freshly Read Books. So right now I am in Columbus, Ohio, visiting my parents who live here for part of the year. And every time I come and visit them here, we go to the book Loft, which is my favorite bookstore, which is in German Village in Columbus. It is a wonderful bookstore if you ever get the chance to go. It's 32 rooms of books. They're all, you know, kind of small rooms, and it's like in this building where the like hallways are skinny, but like there's books just packed everywhere you could possibly think of to pack books, there are books. So we went there during this trip, and then I have a couple of other books as well to share. So I wanted to start with two books that my parents found in thrift stores, antique shops. So basically whenever they go shopping anywhere that like happens to have books, like bargain books and things like that, my mom will take a picture of it and send it to me and see if there's any diamonds in the rough there, and then she saves them for me until the next time I visit. So this time around, she found Ian McEwan's Atonement, which I'm very excited about, and I think may have been on the 30 books to read in your 30s list that I went over just after my 30th birthday. So that kind of works out. I don't know what it's about. I've never read Ian McEwan actually, but I do have another book by him as well. I have Lessons by him, but I haven't read that one either. And then Isabel Allende's Daughter of Fortune. So I have read The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende, and it was really good. A multi-generational family saga with some magical realism mixed in. And I believe that that's a genre that Allende typically stays in, is magical realism. Although it's very like light magical realism, I'll say. I think that the general consensus as far as what magical realism is today is a little different than it used to be. But again, I don't know what it's about. I purely asked for it because of the author. And then the first book purchase that I actually made was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, which I got from this little children's bookstore that was right next to a tennis place that my parents were going to. It was very cute, and I've been planning on reading Little Women for a while. It did have like that gorgeous edition. I'll put a picture up of the one I'm talking about, and I love it. I love seeing it, but man, that thing is thick. It's so thick, and it doesn't seem like it'd be actually nice to read. So even though it looks really pretty and I wanted to go for it, I ended up going for this copy instead, which is also very cute, but it's a lot floppier and it's paperback, so that helps. So it should be easier to actually physically read. And I'm excited to finally get to this. I can't remember if it's on my 100 books bucket list poster, but even if it's not, it is kind of like a bucket list book for me, like a bucket list classic, I guess. Okay, now let's get into the books that I actually got from the book Loft. So I think the first one that I saw and was like, oh yes, for sure, was The Appeal by Janice Hallett. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, but it's a murder mystery book, but it's kind of told, I think, in like emails and text messages, things like that. And you're supposed to be able to figure out who did it by the end, is the way I remember this being described to me. But it's been a long time since I've heard about it. Basically, like when it came out, I felt like I heard about it a lot, and then I haven't quite as much since then. There's a sequel, or I don't know if it's technically a sequel, but another book, kind of the same type of thing, by Janice Hallett, that's out already. But this one, I knew as soon as I heard about it that I really wanted to get it, and I'm so excited to read it. Then I got Cultish. Sorry about all the stickers you're about to see. I think most of them have this little 5% off sticker, but this is Cultish by Amanda Montell. And this one I had just been talking about with Jill from the Book Bully, and I've been watching a lot of documentaries based off cults right now. If you haven't seen The Vow, please go watch it. It's so good. But I just find that really fascinating in general, like the human psychology behind it. And this dives into that, but also just like things that are considered cult-ish, like not full cults, but like it's got cultish vibes almost. And also I've just been wanting to read more nonfiction in general lately. So I thought that this was a good place to start since I am very interested in it. And also that cover, I mean, come on. Then we got True Biz by Sara Nović. This one is actually a book that my mom got, and I think it's gonna stay here or possibly the other place that they live. So it will probably be a while till I read it, but I wanted to include it in this because it is something that I want to read. It is a book about a school for the deaf and like what they're going through. And then I believe there's like a new student who is deaf, but he has never learned sign language or anything. And so he's kind of like joining into this community, and he's never like met another deaf person because both of his parents were hearing. I think that there's just going to be a lot of different perspectives on the deaf community in general, which is something that I'm very interested in. I took several ASL classes when I lived in Indianapolis and was taught by a deaf teacher. And we also got to learn a bit about deaf culture through that. that. I remember I even went to a comedy show where the comedian was deaf, and so the entire thing was in sign language. And while I didn't understand nearly as much of that as I wish I did, you still kind of get like more of the feeling, more of the ideas of like what the world is like to somebody who views it so differently, or who occupies such a different space in the world oftentimes. And it's just like a unique perspective, you know, not just on themselves, but on the hearing world in general. So I thought that this would be a good read. I've really wanted to get back into learning sign language and learning it more, but unfortunately there's just not classes where I live. I think maybe I could take some at like a college or something, but not quite like how I had it when I was in Indianapolis, which has a very large deaf community and had a lot of options as far as classes and things. Then we've got Saint X by Alexis Schaitkin. I actually didn't realize until after I purchased this that I already own a book by this author, which is Elsewhere, which as I'm filming this, although the award may well have been given by the time this comes out, I have so many other videos that are going to be coming out likely before this one, but as I'm filming this, it is longlisted for the Carol Shields Prize. But I know that I'd had this one on my TBR for a while, and I know that it's like thriller-esque, but I don't really remember anything else about it. And by TBR, I mean my unowned TBR, like wishlist books, I guess. So I didn't really even remember what it was about, but this had been like a pre-owned book. Like you can tell that it's, you know, got a little bit of damage. And so it was only $7. So I was like, yeah, sure. And then another bargain book that I got was The Lost Causes of Bleak Creek by Rhett McLaughlin and Neal, who are, of course, Good Mythical Morning, you know, basically YouTube royalty. This is supposed to be like a thriller set in their hometown, or like a version of their hometown with like a version of themselves. And I get fascinated by books that are written by YouTubers that you wouldn't really see them as being authors, but they'll end up writing like a novel. Like I'm not too interested in the nonfiction ones or like the memoirs and things like that, but I am kind of interested in stuff like this. And I know that there's a few other YouTubers that have done the same thing that you wouldn't necessarily think of them as being people that are interested in writing a book. But I have hope for this one. I don't know why. And maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe I shouldn't have hoped for it, but I'm just too curious to know what it's like. And I feel like I haven't really seen people talk about it. But also I think when the book came out, I wasn't really in the booktube space enough to see it being talked about. Or was I? And it just wasn't talked about. I don't know. I can't remember time. And then the last book I got was Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. This one I got because, I mean, it's a classic that I definitely want to read, but I remember the very first video I saw that I would consider to be like a booktube video, and it was by a channel that I don't think is necessarily a booktube channel. I've never seen another video by this person, but I think that it was a video that I was interested in enough to watch it, and then that led me down the rabbit hole of booktube and like discovering it in general. So I have very fond thoughts of that video, and that one was, and I can't remember his name, but I'll find the video and I'll show a screenshot and link it in the description. But he read all the books that Joe talks about in You Season 1, which I believe was the only season out at the time. And one of them was Don Quixote. And I just remember like watching that video, and he ended up really loving the book. And the way he talked about it, it stuck in my brain. And even though I can't remember the actual things that he said about the book, it's so stuck with me that it's made me really want to read this. And so when we were there and I was thinking about getting another classic, like this one just popped into my head. It has this nice like faux leather cover that seems like it would be nice to like actually hold open and stuff, which I think is kind of hard to find sometimes with classics, and to have them still look nice, you know? And do I remember what this is about? I think it's just like a big adventure novel, right? Like that's what I think of when I think of this book. So I'm excited about this one, although I do think that it'll probably not be until at least next year that I read it, just based off of how many big books I am hoping to get to this year. Although I've been doing a good job so far, but that's a topic for another video. So yeah, that's all the books in this haul. I hope you enjoyed it. Are there any books on here that you've already read? If so, what did you think about them? And if not, which ones sound the most appealing to you? Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, please do consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!